Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, and questions you may have. And please stay with us. Our Reading the Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella, starting with the weather report. Partly sunny today with a shower in places, a high of 85. Mainly clear tonight, low 69. Sun breaking through clouds at times tomorrow, with a thunderstorm around in the afternoon, a high of 84. And a low 69 tomorrow. And for Friday, a shower and thunderstorm, a high of 79, low of 65. For Saturday, mostly sunny, high of 82, low of 62. Sunday, partly sunny, high of 83, low of 64. Monday, mostly sunny, high of 84, low of 68. Tuesday, episodes of sunshine, high of 83, low of 66. Sunrise today was at 5:45 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:56 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. U.S. launches new attacks. This is in the war on Iran. Officials also revoke oil license after suspected ship strikes in by Tehran. Reuters. The U.S. military unleashed a new wave of strikes against Iran on Tuesday and revoked a license allowing the country to sell oil after 3 tankers were hit by projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz, putting pressure on the already fragile ceasefire. After a day in which crowds mourned the Iran's slain supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in the holy city of Qom, U.S. Central Command announced that it began a series of strikes intended to impose what it called heavy costs. Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire, CENTCOM posted on social media. Iranian media reported explosions early Wednesday local time in the southern port city of Sirak, on Qishm Island, and in Bandar Abbas. No civilian deaths were reported, but several people were injured by shrapnel from an enemy projectile that hit a commercial pier in Sirak, according to an Iranian state TV reporter. The report said strikes also hit fishing piers in Sirak and in Bandar Abbas, where several fishing boats were set ablaze. A U.S. official told Reuters that strikes targeted Iranian air defense systems, coastal surveillance systems, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, and drone launch sites. The incidents were the latest threat to the ceasefire agreement the U.S. and Iran struck last month, pausing the conflict that started in February with U.S. and Israeli strikes across the Islamic Republic. In a potentially major blow to that agreement, Washington moved on Tuesday to withdraw a key concession that had allowed Iran to sell oil on international markets. Oil prices rose more than 3% after the U.S. announced the move. A U.S. official said earlier negotiators continued to work in good faith toward a final agreement with Iran, but control of the strait has given Tehran immense leverage, effectively allowing it to force a stalemate with the world's most powerful military. Analysts say Tehran uses attacks on ships to underscore that leverage as it negotiates a long-term peace deal with the U.S. Under the interim U.S.-Iran agreement, the U.S. Treasury issued a June 22nd general license to allow the sale of crude oil and petrochemical and petroleum products of Iranian origin through August 21st. In revoking that license on Tuesday, it gave Iran until July 17 to wound down transactions. Iran's foreign ministry condemned the move and said Washington would bear responsibility for the consequences. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Bus driver pleads guilty in fatal 2025 crash on Thruway. Even after the driver of the motor coach that crashed on a state thruway near Pembroke last August pleaded guilty Monday to criminally negligent homicide, Authorities continue to investigate the disaster that killed 5 and injured dozens, and they appear to be looking closely at the company that operated the tour bus. Investigators have determined that Bin Shao, the 56-year-old driver from Flushing, Queens, lost control of the bus when he reached for a stray water bottle near his feet, causing him to drift toward the right shoulder of the thruway. He then swerved back left, traveling across the median and rolling the bus onto its right side. Shao will return to Geneva County Court in Batavia for his sentencing at 1:30 p.m. September 9th. He faces 15 months to 4 years in state prison after pleading guilty to 5 felonies Monday. Shao's attorney, Daniel Lynch, said his client is remorseful. He's carrying a tremendous amount of guilt and feeling terrible about what happened, just understanding that what he did for literally 20 seconds affected all these people's lives, Lynch said. It's going to affect him for the rest of his life, and he has expressed great remorse about this. And I think that is evident from how he was in court and what the judge said, Lynch said Monday outside of the courtroom, according to video posted online by the Daily News in Batavia. Shao was originally charged with manslaughter in addition to 5 counts of criminally negligent homicide, which would have carried a maximum sentence of 15 years. Lynch said they felt the sentence was too hefty to risk taking the case to trial. There's a tremendous amount of risk going to trial in any case, and in this case, I feel that given the number of people who lost their lives and the way it affected the community and all the people who were injured, that it wasn't going to be a situation where you had a great amount to gain, Lynch said. The 5 people who were killed in the August 22nd crash were Shankar Kumar Yai, 65, of Mahbubani, India; Pinky Shangrani, 60, of East Brunswick, New Jersey; Zai Hong Shou, 22, of Beijing, China, and a Columbia University student in New York City; Zhang Zhalen, 55, of Jersey City, New Jersey; and Yan Migli, 56, also of Jersey City, New Jersey. Genesee County District Attorney Kevin Finnell said nothing will bring back the loved ones of the families involved, but he hopes the Shao taking accountability will bring them some closure. I'm satisfied that he took responsibility, Finnell said. I think there is a sentencing range that's sufficient to give the judge an opportunity to impose a sentence that is going to make him fully accountable for the deaths of these people. Even after Shao's guilty plea, many questions remain surrounding the incident, which led to a massive emergency response. Nearly 800 pages of documents released late last month by the National Transportation Safety Board provide factual information about the crash and interviews with the driver, passengers, and officials from M&Y Tours Incorporated, the Staten Island company that owned and operated the tour bus. Analysis, probable cause, and contributing factors will be determined at the conclusion of the NTSB's investigation, which could still take another year. Operator questions. While the documents released by the NTSB focused much attention on Shao, investigators also dove deep into the conduct of M&Y Tours. 2 passengers injured in the crash in September sued Shao and M&Y Tours, alleging the incident was the result of negligence and recklessness. That case remains active. M&Y Tours primarily handles trips from New York City to Buffalo and Niagara Falls during the summer months, and from New York City to a casino in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania during the winter months, company leaders told the NTSB. M&Y Tours received its most recent compliance review in September 2024 and received a satisfactory safety rating according to NTSB. But in its investigation, the NTSB said it found the carrier lacked safety policies, standard operating procedures, a corporate safety plan, and a driver handbook. M&Y Tours also did not have a formal safety rewards program or disciplinary program for poor-performing drivers, according to NTSB documents. After discussions with the NTSB, M&Y Tours in October provided a 46-page driver handbook, which included a new distracted driver policy. That policy says distracted driving includes texting, holding a cell phone, reading emails, eating, drinking, or smoking, reaching for objects while driving, using navigation devices without voice activation. In addition, the carrier also added a requirement for its drivers to conduct trip safety briefings to each charter. That policy requires drivers to identify emergency exits, seatbelt use, location of the fire extinguisher, and other bus safety features. That additional requirement is important because 8 of 9 passengers on the bus who were interviewed by the NTSB said the driver did not conduct a pre-trip safety briefing prior to any departures during the trip. On seatbelts, as the NTSB continues to investigate, questions also remain about seatbelt usage on motor coaches and how many seatbelts on the bus were accessible and working. As of April 2025, New York law requires all charter bus passengers 8 years old and older to wear seatbelts provided on the bus. But that law defines a charter bus as a bus manufactured or assembled on or after November 28, 2016, for transporting a group of passengers to a specific destination. The bus involved in the crash was a 2005 Van Hool. On November 24th, about 3 months after the crash, an NTSB investigator met with the director of the State Department of Transportation's Carrier Compliance Bureau to discuss the lack of seatbelt inspections in the roadside inspection program, according to the NTSB documents. 2 days later, that state director notified the NTSB that the state decided to add the inspection of seatbelts at all seating positions to its inspection program. The state told the NTSB that the new inspection requirement would apply to vehicles in the state semi-annual inspection program, which applies to about 60,000 commercial motor vehicles. More changes or safety recommendations could come on the heels of this investigation. NTSB spokesperson Sarah Taylor Sulik said the NTSB's final report can take up to 24 months to be completed, which would be around August 2027. The full analysis, including any final findings, probable cause, and potential recommendations, will be provided in the final report, Sulik said. What's known from the documents released recently is that the bus had 61 reclining passenger seats with armrests, 59 of which were equipped with lap-only seatbelts. 2 passenger seats in the 16th row on the right side had no seatbelts. In the NTSB's post-crash investigation of the seats still in the bus, 6 seats were removed during the extraction work by emergency responders. Investigators found only 30 of them had accessible and functional seatbelt restraints. Since the crash is still under investigation, Sulik declined to comment further about the NTSB's seatbelt examination. The final report might have more information about the seatbelts that were non-working and the reason that they were not working, Sulik said. According to NTSB, 54 occupants, the driver, 43 adults, and 10 minors ranging in age from 11 months old to 16 years old, were aboard the motor coach when it crashed. Of those, 5 passengers died. 44 passengers and the driver sustained injuries. 3 had an unknown injury, and only 1 person, a 5-year-old girl, was uninjured. In all, the driver and 17 passengers were ejected or partially ejected from the bus during the rollover. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Data centers are driving up costs for power in Rust Belt factories. New York. For years, electricity costs for the Belden Brick Company in Sugar Creek, Ohio, had been relatively stable. Last year, they surged by 90%, largely because of rising power demand from data centers in the region. The 141-year-old brick manufacturer, whose products can be found in iconic buildings including the Texas Alamo and Notre Dame University, is seeing power bills rise mainly from a monthly capacity charge, which recently jumped from $1,600 a month to $12,000 a month. Belden Brick is among many manufacturers across America's heartland where costs are rising as power-hungry data centers serving the artificial intelligence industry proliferate. Factory electricity bills, a core expense, are rising faster for many homes and other businesses, according to a Reuters review of U.S. energy data and interviews with nearly a dozen manufacturers and industry advocates. Federal, state, and local governments responding to consumer anger and grid stability concerns are pushing big tech to pay more for their expected demand. but some of their proposals lump in smaller factories with tech giants such as Meta and Amazon, whose power needs can dwarf even large manufacturers by a factor of 50. Meta declined to comment. Amazon did not respond to a comment request. Capacity charges are designed to compensate power generators for ensuring the grid has enough electricity for peak usage and to spur development of new supply. They generally account for about 10% of residential bills, but can represent up to 3 times that for manufacturers, according to interviews with manufacturers, attorneys, and energy experts. Such fees have soared in the 13-state region covered by grid operators' PJM interconnection due to stagnant supply and demand from data centers where one server warehouse can use as much electricity as a mid-sized town. That capacity charge just jumped off the page, said company president Brad Belden, part of the 5th generation working at the company. Despite such capacity charge hikes, PJM was forced to take emergency steps last week, including seeking some users to curb electricity use to prevent rolling blackouts as searing temperatures pushed peak demands to a new record. The rising costs and regulatory uncertainty threaten some factories' volatility at a time when President Trump is prioritizing domestic manufacturing, advocates and policy experts say. These businesses are considering rising prices, slowing growth, or in some cases, relocating. Belden has raised brick prices by 4% and profits have still shrunk. If bills are rising, he said, local manufacturers may quickly reach limits on cost-cutting or price hiking. The White House said in a statement that Trump has taken action to cushion the blow on manufacturers, citing his hosting of tech companies signing a rate power protection pledge earlier this year and directives to build more power plants in PJM, paid for by tech companies. Data center advocates say the industry's rapid expansion is driving long overdue investments in America's electric grid and cite other factors driving up costs, including power plant retirements and transmission constraints. Data center growth is making us finally grapple with the difficult decisions that we were always going to have to face, said Aaron Tinjum, Vice President of Energy for Data Center Coalition, a trade group. 1,000% hike. PJM, the largest U.S. grid operator, covers a mid-Atlantic and Midwest manufacturing belt from New Jersey to northern Illinois and as far south as Tennessee that has become attractive to data center developers. Of the 8 U.S. states considering emerging data center hubs, 5 are in the Rust Belt, according to Synergy Research Group data. The clash of old manufacturers and new data centers in the same region weighs heavily on the costs and grid reliability. Data centers, said PJM spokesperson Jeff Shields, can be built faster than the generation needed to serve them, driving up demand faster than supply. PJM sets capacity prices paid to power generators based on forecasted supply and demand, and manufacturers can pay an outsized share once capacity charges filter down to customers. PJM's capacity prices jumped from $28.92 per megawatt day in 2024 to the current $329.17 per megawatt day, a 1,038% raise, driven primarily by data center growth. That helped push up electricity prices more quickly for industrial users in big manufacturing states that are also becoming data center hubs in PJM's region, according to Reuters calculations using U.S. Energy Department on electricity prices. Average industrial capacity prices were up 31% in Pennsylvania, 26% in Ohio as of December 25 from 12 months earlier, compared with a 7% rise nationwide for industrial users. Residential customers in those 2 states saw increases of 14% and 9% respectively. Even a 1% or 2% power cost increase can stretch factory owners, who often operate on thin margins and use lots of electricity, economists and industry officials say. This can have short and long-term impacts on whether or not these facilities can continue to operate, said Paul Sicchio, president of the trade group Industrial Energy Consumers of America.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:20. Today in history, July 8th, 1497, Vasco da Gama set sail from Lisbon, Portugal, with a fleet of 4 ships and a crew of 170 men, searching for a sea route from Western Europe to Asia via the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. In 1776, popular tradition holds that the Liberty Bell rang out from the tower of the Pennsylvania State House, now known as Independence Hall, in Philadelphia to summon citizens and Pennsylvania delegates for the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. In 1889, reporters Charles Dow, Edward Jones, and Charles Bergstresser published the first issue of the Wall Street Journal. In 1947, Roswell Army Airfield Public Information Officer Walter Halt stated in a news release that a flying disc was recovered by the military near Roswell, New Mexico, and thus the Roswell UFO conspiracies were born. In 1948, women were accepted for the first time to the U.S. Air Force under a program called Women in the Air Force. In 1994, Kim Il-sung, the communist supreme leader of North Korea since 1948, who ignited the Korean War in 1950, died of a heart attack at the age of 82. And in 2011, NASA launched its last space shuttle mission. The final mission of the orbiter Atlantis lifted off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center on Merritt Island, Florida. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial, 1 year mark. Mubenga has notched some successes, but formidable challenges remain. It's hard to believe that it has already been a year since Pascal Mubenga became superintendent of the Buffalo Public Schools. As the saying goes, time flies when you're having fun. The superintendent may not have been having fun exactly, but he has been active. For Mubenga and the 29,000 student school districts, it has been a fast and furious year with many challenges. The News' Ben Sugimoto details those challenges in a comprehensive piece covering such key topics as school turnarounds, cooperation amid change from principals, working with unions, and perhaps the most controversial issue, school closings. It has been a big year for Mubenga, who previously led Durham Public Schools in North Carolina. No one said the job would be easy. The man who landed the job of moving the academic needle forward while dealing with budgetary and administrative issues remains at the helm of a seemingly moving the ship forward. To be fair, a year is short, and Mubenga should be given enough time to fulfill his mission. As it is, he has already detailed some successes, such as unanimous passage of a $1.4 billion budget, a prize lottery to reward student attendance, a collaborative effort with unions to develop an agency program for the highest need students with autism, and a new strategic plan developed with roughly 60 district and community representatives. Mubenga was billed as a turnaround specialist, adept at leading urban districts and creating improved educational outcomes for schools with poor academic performance. Buffalo needs that improvement. It had fallen far behind, with fewer than 30% of students reaching state proficiency in math and English. Designations from the State Education Department released in November painted a bleaker picture. Of its 60 schools, Buffalo went from 21 in the state's lowest designation, Comprehensive Support and Improvement, CSI, to 35, and from 3 schools in receivership to 5. It results in more funding by the State Education Department for a self-developed improvement plan, and to that point, Mubenga voiced confidence in a strategic plan established in May. His confidence in teachers and principals should go a long way in buy-in from the leaders on the ground. It also helps that Mubenga was once a principal and understands the job that requires, as he said, making 1,000 decisions every day. The superintendent surely scored points among principals when he devoted his budget add-backs to hiring more assistant principals, although he probably lost equally as many when reducing support staff. There are other noteworthy observations. Mubenga's positive response when it comes to unions is quite interesting, as he comes from North Carolina, which has reported the lowest unionization rate in the country. Yet he demonstrated impressive skill while working with Buffalo Teachers Federation and Buffalo Council of Supervisors and Administrators on autism classrooms. The solution? Initial support through West Seneca-based Autism Learning Partners and the district's own agency school for 26-27. There is perhaps no more emotional and controversial than closing schools. Efforts to close 2 schools as long-term money-saving measure fell flat over the winter. But then, over the spring, Mubanga told the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority that the district plans to close at least 4 schools in 27-28. Expect pain and heartbreak as the community fights for its schools. At least the new superintendent knows what to expect. He commented, "Am I going to be popular or not? I don't think so. It's a tough time." The superintendent is looking to get some time off over the summer to get his energy back before those conversations, and many more tough topics must be faced. For the community's sake, we wish him a prosperous tenure that improves the educational outcomes for Buffalo Public School students.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by John Deering of Creator Syndicate. And it shows many, many bags of money, and behind it stands Donald Trump. And next to him on one side is Donald Trump Jr., and next to him is Melania Trump. And on the other side of Donald Trump's shoulders, there's Eric Trump. And there's some more bags of money and someone else behind them. Oh, very tall. That would be his newest son. But anyhow, the Eric Trump says in little words, "I pour concrete." And President Trump says, "Look over there," as he points outside the picture. "Socialists want to tax our money." Our money. Yes, and coming soon from the makers of The Apprentice, Blue-Collar Billionaires. The second cartoon is by Tom Stiglich, also of Creator Syndicate, and it shows Senator Mark Kelly, who is holding up a flag of Mexico and wearing a Mexico t-shirt in support of the Mexico versus England. However, England defeated Mexico in that World Cup game. And there's a man and a woman standing behind him, and the man says, "I sometimes wonder whether Senator Mark Kelly truly has our best interests at heart." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Shelter is reaching crisis point. It was encouraging to see Channel 7 exposing the current situation at the City of Buffalo Animal Shelter. The public needs to be kept aware of the progress and plans the city has for the shelter. Assistant Deputy Mayor Benjamin Swankamp was interviewed at the shelter and expressed his support of future plans to improve the current conditions at the CBAs and plan for a new shelter. "I believe he will be a positive force in making this happen. There are over the limit on animals and need more people to adopt/foster them as soon as possible." In support of the shelter, Swankamp stepped up to the plate and adopted a dog himself, giving a home to an animal in need. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for supporting the shelter. This from Marianne Wyman of Tonawanda.
Bills Mafia everywhere. My wife and I are currently vacationing in Italy, and I just came across my view about baseball caps and reactions. I have a similar story. We were dining outside, and next to us sat a young couple from Philadelphia. After introductions, we found out that the lady was from Ukraine, a doctoral student living in the USA. 3 Western New York teachers were fortunate enough to take a group of high school students to her homeland many years ago on a 3-week visit to Eastern Europe, mostly Russia. Her first words before we even sat down were, "Bills Mafia." I was wearing a Bills hat. My wife and I were overwhelmed that she knew exactly what to say, and we had a good laugh about it. Then on our way back to our apartment, from across a little side street in Florence, we heard, "Go Bills," as 2 women shouted it out to us again. They were from the Rochester area. It was wonderful to hear the day before our nation's 250th birthday. I said to many friends and strangers that the Bills are America's team, not the Cowboys. But could they also be the world's team? Well, even if not, it was a fun story for us. Go Bills. It was written by David Aquino of Amherst. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. On cash versus credit, it now costs more to mint a penny than it is worth. I get it. So now many stores are rounding down the price to customers. Paying in cash can actually cost you less than charging it. I wonder how much stores will have to absorb annually for the inconvenience of having to deal with 1 cent legal tender. Now, many stadiums around the country are no longer accepting actual paper and coin money. The Bills Stadium is one of them. Your phone crashes and suddenly you have no money. That being said, I find it ironic that one of the bars in the new stadium is called the Charge Bar. Below the sign in fine print, why not put electronic money only? This from Stephen Hallis of Cheektowaga. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:30. Some opinion columns. This one is My View. It's written by Larry Shiro, who looks back at a long life. Boomers had mostly wonderful lives. Tuesday marked the celebration of my 75th birthday. I'm not the first person to reach this milestone, but it has caused me to look back on my life and marvel at how great a journey it has been. My parents belonged to the greatest generation, which created the boomers, as my adult children call us. Our schools were packed with students. I have been spending more time looking back over my life growing up in Niagara Falls in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We boomers saw the advent of television. It was black and white, had 3 channels, and no remote control. We cut our teeth on legendary shows like Captain Kangaroo and the Mickey Mouse Club. Saturday morning TV was cartoons, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, and Popeye. We had Howdy Doody and Clarabelle and Buffalo Bob Smith. TV was so innocent and entertaining back then. Captain Kangaroo gave us Bunny Rabbit, Dancing Bear, and Mr. Green Jeans. We couldn't see the color of his green jeans, though. We walked to neighborhood schools, no buses, just my PF flyers. Boys wore dungarees with cuffs rolled up at the bottoms. Summer vacation consisted of endless pickup baseball games and Little League games at night. As we grew into junior high school, we were introduced to rock and roll. The Beatles became our lighthouse group. Our music was and still is timeless. Nothing today compares to the Stones, Motown, and endless other groups. At the conclusion of junior high school beckoned us. Our innocence was starting to fade. The reality of life was looming on the horizon. Suddenly, those girls we shunned became noticeable. Everyone was trying to get a part-time job at the local supermarket to stock shelves and bag groceries. We received a paycheck every week for our 15 or 20 hours of work. Minimum wage was about $1.60 an hour. I recalled paying something called FICA tax. I asked my father what it was, and he said, "Just pay it. When you get old, you will collect something called Social Security." He was right. We started to drive cars, and getting a license was a real sign of growing up and independence. All along, we were told to pay attention to our grades, as college would be our next academic endeavor. Going to college was scary and not an expected conclusion to formal education for some of us. We grew up with the advent of space race and President Kennedy declaring we would put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. We started watching Space Flight with Alan Shepard and John Glenn leading the way. We did see the first man on the moon in July 1969. That year was an amazing one. I graduated high school, turned 18, and signed up for the military draft. I still have my draft card. We were told to carry it at all times under penalty of law. The Vietnam War was waiting for us after graduation. If we went to college, a deferment was given. Who could forget Woodstock, the greatest rock concert of all time? This snapshot recounts just some of the many life experiences we baby boomers experienced. Spending 75 years on this earth is a long time. I only wish I could start over. I don't think I fully appreciated it all. Happy birthday to my fellow 1951ers. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Another voice. Social Security and Medicare can be preserved. And this is from Joseph Schlund. And Joseph Schlund of Williamsville is a retired IT professional who writes about Social Security and healthcare policy. Economist Charles Blahous is right to warn that Social Security and Medicare face serious financial pressure. The trust fund timeliness or timelines he cites are real, but the conversation should not stop at insolvency dates. There are practical, fair solutions that preserve the safety net without cutting benefits for retirees. The challenge is not a lack of opinions. It is a lack of structural modernization and a willingness to update programs that were designed for a very different era. Social Security still operates on a model created in the 1930s, even though the workforce, life expectancy, and retirement patterns have changed dramatically. Medicare is even more fragmented, with retirees forced to navigate multiple plans and deadlines. If we want long-term solvency, the goal should be a system that reflects how Americans actually live and retire today. Last year, I proposed the Secure Retirement Act, a modernization plan that strengthens both programs without raising taxes or reducing benefits. It begins by restoring the $2.9 trillion in Treasury obligations held by the Social Security Trust Fund. These surpluses were loaned to the federal government over decades. Restoring those funds stabilizes the system and reduces the size of future adjustments. Social Security is not simply another federal account. It is a contract with the public that deserves to be honored. The plan updates the benefit formulae with and protects lower-income workers, preserves full benefits for current retirees, and creates a predictable path for future generations. For Medicare, the Secure Medicare Blueprint replaces the current maze with a unified standard inclusive plan. Every retiree is automatically enrolled at full retirement age. Hospital care, outpatient services, preventative care, prescription coverage, mental health care, and basic dental and vision are included. There are no separate parts to decode and no premiums deducted from Social Security checks. Retirees receive a clear foundation of care. Those who want additional services can use a benefit enhancement credit to upgrade coverage. This preserves choice without confusion and reduces administrative waste. We can act quickly and decisively without cutting benefits. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Trump takes credit for Walmart's summer sale. President Trump is taking credit for Walmart's summer sale, claiming that a request from his administration led to discounts on thousands of items for summer road trips and pool parties that happen every year. The country's largest grocer on Monday highlighted some of its seasonal sales, which are common for the summer. This included rollbacks on ground beef, ribs, soda, and more at Walmart and Sam's Club locations, according to a press release. Earlier on Monday, Trump wrote on Truth Social that Walmart lowered prices at my administration's request to celebrate our great country's 250th birthday. He highlighted an alleged 15% discount on beef. This is a huge deal for many millions of Americans who, smartly, shop at Walmart, which is truly a patriotic company who loves the USA, he continued. Trump tied his regular seasonal sale to his claims that his administration lowered costs for consumers from gas prices to eggs. The comments echoed the false claims from Trump that Walmart's cheaper Thanksgiving basket last year were due to grocery prices going way down in his current term. Summer sales are typical for chains like Walmart, and these discounts had been in place for a week before Trump's Truth Social post. According to Walmart's press release, 73% ground beef roll is marked down almost 12% to $5.94 a pound. Corn on the cob and cherries, both of which are in season, have discounts of roughly 50%. 24 packs of Pepsi and Coca-Cola products are on sale for $9.97, and a 200 count of disposable paper plates are also $1 off. Sam's Club is also offering discounts on 250 items, including different types of meat such as chicken wings, beef hot dogs, and ribs. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Booming gig economy in China masks plenty of pain. Bao Zhang began driving for a Chinese ride-hailing app this year after losing his job as a software tester, and says the weak job market gives him little hope of returning to the tech sector. His story is increasingly common in China, where tens of millions are shifting from formal employment into the gig economy as meager unemployment insurance, record number of graduates, and a shortage of jobs squeeze opportunities. Those who used to take taxis now have to drive themselves, said the 30-year-old who works from 7 a.m. until nearly midnight in Beijing to earn about 6,000 yuan, 885 a month, after vehicle rental and charging costs. The China New Employment Forms Research Center, a think tank, estimates the number of people in flexible employment without a permanent full-time contract rising to 320 million this year, from 280 million in 2025, a cohort almost as large as the U.S. population and about 44% of China's workforce. Analysts say China's gig economy has become a crucial employment buffer as the property crisis wipes out construction jobs and manufacturers shed workers through automation and cost-cutting amid tariffs, overcapacity, and price wars. Increasingly, it hires educated youth and white-collar workers squeezed by work domestic demand and AI adoption. The proportion is extremely high, said Yang Zhen, a cultural anthropology expert at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. It's no longer limited to rural migrants and has spread to the middle class and university graduates. China's Human Resources Ministry and the State Council Information Office, which answers media queries on behalf of the cabinet, did not immediately respond to comment requests. As elsewhere, gig economy work mitigates the income shock of losing formal jobs. But in China, one government advisor said these rise of gig jobs where social insurance contributions are not mandatory heightens long-term risks to an inadequately funded welfare system. In 2019, Chinese Academy of Social Sciences reports warned that the National Pension Fund could run out by 2035 as the population ages. A 2024 update said delaying retirement could push depletion back 8 to 9 years. It's not easy to find a solution due to unstable incomes and contracts in the gig factor, said the advisor, suggesting Beijing could support the formal services industry to create better jobs. Central government transfers that plug social insurance budget gaps roughly trebled over the last decade to about 3 trillion, about $44 billion, in yuan, doubling as a percentage of total expenditure to 10%, a Gavacal Dragonomics analysis shows. A second government advisor said further taxing gig workers, many of them rural migrants, to reduce the burden would be highly unreasonable. Birth subsidies could be a preferable long-term fix, he said. Only 2 of the 12 flexible workers Reuters interviewed said they were voluntarily contributing, while 2 others said they paid through formal part-time jobs outside their gig work. The rest said they preferred to save on their own. I can take control rather than wait for decades for others to pay me, said Angel An, 24, who earns more than the average ride-hailing driver by promoting her services to tourists in Shanghai and Suzhou on social media. Zhang suffers recurring ankle and knee pain from long hours in traffic, but has chosen not to buy medical insurance, adding that pension felt too far away and would be too small anyway. Gig jobs lack the pay and security many Chinese expect, said HSBC Asia economist Frederick Newman, warning this drags on consumption and growth. A whole new generation is growing up unaccustomed to the security and confidence that their parents for a long time enjoyed, Newman said. A December 2025 government report found that by the end 2024, only 70.6 million flexible workers were enrolled in the Urban Employee Pension Scheme, which supplements basic retirement benefits. Most migrant workers contribute small amounts only to the basic scheme, where payouts can be as low as 163 yuan, about $24 a month. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. AI gaining a foothold with fake job postings. Workers at Doherty Staffing Solutions were perplexed when strangers started calling the office in response to recruiting texts that the firm never sent. The Minneapolis-based staffing agency soon pieced together what was happening. Fraudsters, posing as Doherty recruiters, were sending fake job ads to individuals in an attempt to extract confidential information from job seekers. Such imposter scams are proliferating and morphing at an accelerated rate as artificial intelligence makes impersonation easier than ever. Generative AI has lowered the cost of producing a convincing fake. Even a website can be put together in a matter of minutes, said Manji Reje, a University of St. Thomas professor and the director of its Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence. We used to always say, "Don't believe until you see," Reje said. Now, I would say, "Don't believe even if you see," and it looks very, very authentic. Imposter scams conned consumers out of $3.5 billion last year, nearly tripling in 5 years, according to a recent analysis by the Federal Trade Commission. About $1 billion stemmed from people impersonating legitimate businesses, often bankers or government officials. Christopher Murfreege, director of the FTC Bureau of Consumer Protection, said imposter scams are among the most pernicious forms of fraud. In Minnesota alone last year, the FTC recorded 33,204 fraud reports in total, at about $168 million in losses, with a median loss of $340. Imposter scams accounted for about 37% of all reports. Fraudsters have been impersonating recruiting firms for some time, said Stephen Dwyer, CEO of the American Staffing Association, a trade group, but industry members worry a sharp increase in the past year could cause lasting damage to their reputations. Doherty's saga occurred earlier this month when the firm's likeness was stolen by online scammers who were trying to get the text recipients to hand over their Social Security and bank account numbers to secure a job that didn't exist. Several of the text messages shared by the staffing firm show realistic, high-gloss images of beaming women donning blazers, all of them named Emma Smith. Some of the fake ads feature the real Doherty logo. They offer remote positions that require U.S. residency and a valid Social Security number. Everything in the ads is bogus. An outside consultant conducted a forensic computer analysis and determined the photos were produced using AI, according to the firm. The business began an awareness campaign alerting the public to the scam. Deepfakes and other advanced technologies could push the annual consumer fraud tally in the U.S. as high as $40 billion by 2027, according to consulting firm Deloitte. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Data breach. U.S. bankruptcy judge Brian Walsh in St. Louis approved a $46.75 million settlement Tuesday for victims of a 2023 data breach at the genetic testing company 23andMe, which exposed genetic and other personal information to an estimated 6.9 million customers. And in a rail merger, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern told a U.S. government agency Tuesday they are willing to divest ownership stakes in some smaller railroads as part of their proposed $85 billion merger. The deal would create the first U.S. coast-to-coast freight rail operator.
Thank you,
Linda?
Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Atencio Erlinda Mantes. Giavaroletti Paul. Krivik Laura L. Ne Liberatore. Leary Robert E. Maurer Michael E. Osmond Charles L. Schwant Ruth Jane Ne Kranava. Schulp Edwin G. Slazak Mary Ann Debo. Stein Donna V. And George E. Johnson, the pioneering Chicago entrepreneur whose eponymous company transformed black hair care in the U.S. with brands including Afro Sheen, Ultra Wave, and Classy Curl, died on Monday at age 99, according to news media reports. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. You are strong-willed, dynamic, and purpose-filled. You have artistic and practical skills, and this is a year for learning and teaching. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. Aries, 3 stars. Keep your digs tidy and your fridge stacked, because relatives might be camped on your doorstep. Tonight, check your belongings. Taurus, 4 stars. Allow extra time when you're traveling this week, because Mercury retrograde will create delays in your transportation plans. Tonight you win. Gemini, 3 stars. Checks might be late in the mail, and other delays to financial matters are likely, along with mistakes with your credit cards, your bank accounts, or anything to do with your finances. Tonight, enjoy privacy. Cancer, 4 stars. Mercury is retrograde in your sign until July 23rd, giving you the advantage of being able to finish old business. Tonight, friendships. Leo, 3 stars. Mercury retrograde might bring opportunities to explore spiritual issues from the past. It might reveal secrets about yourself and others. Tonight, you're admired. Virgo, 4 stars. Old friends and acquaintances from the past are back in your world now. Some contacts that you will hear from might be through clubs, groups, or organizations. Tonight, explore and learn. Libra, 3 stars. Very likely you're thinking about or running into parents, ex-bosses, and authority figures from your past. Tonight, check your finances. Scorpio, 3 stars. Travel plans will be likely for some of you. Double check itineraries and small details. Tonight, listen and cooperate. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Double check all transactions and financial negotiations with others, because Mercury retrograde will encourage errors and hiccups. Tonight, get better organized. Capricorn, 4 stars. Mercury retrograde will attract new news about ex-partners and old friends. In some cases, you will encounter these people in person or online. Aquarius, this particular Mercury retrograde will be challenging for you because it will affect your job, your work, and even your health. Tonight, relax at home. Pisces, 4 stars. Old flames are back in your world, either in your thoughts, your dreams, online, or in person. Tonight, interesting conversations.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Dear Heloise, this is the time of year when many do-it-yourselfers use hand clippers and cutters to trim flowers, bushes, and small branches. Often they become coated with dried sap and plant material from use. While there are products that are available for this purpose, I found that kitchen steel wool pads and water can quickly and completely remove the material, and that's from Bob. And read all about it. Dear Heloise, printed news doesn't depend upon a battery or electricity. It can be taken whole or in part to read while waiting in line or waiting for customer assistance at a bank or store. Most of the puzzles can be filled in, unlike the online versions. Newspapers can be used for other purposes, including cleaning windows or in the garden, and can be recycled. Finally, newspapers can be read for long periods of time without the breaks that should be taken when viewing computer screens. It's from Alan. And the response from Heloise, Alan, no one can argue with your logic. However, the cost of producing a newspaper has gone through the roof. It's not just paper and ink, it's machinery, repairs, staff, insurance, and much more. As much as many of us love our newspapers, it's slowly dying, and digital news is here to stay. And that was from Heloise. Don't dip. Dear Heloise, my husband has taken up chewing tobacco instead of smoking cigarettes. I find it repulsive, and I believe that it's just as dangerous as smoking. He doesn't believe that it causes cancer. That's from Donna. And there we go. Donna, chewing tobacco affects the mouth, heart, and internal organs, and it contains 28 cancer-causing chemicals. A dip of tobacco that is held in one's mouth for 30 minutes, on average, has as much nicotine as 3 to 5 cigarettes, according to the American Lung Association. Since nicotine goes through the mucous membranes in the mouth, the hit is quicker and more intense. Oral cancer isn't something you want to deal with if you can avoid it. Doctors have had to operate and at times remove half of a patient's face. This isn't an exaggeration. And that's from Heloise. Reading the fine print. Dear Heloise, I also have trouble reading the fine print on labels. Sometimes it's due to the size of the font, and sometimes it's due to poor packaging when the print has no depth due to the background color of the packaging. I wear reading glasses and have found that slipping a second pair on over the first pair, and of course using good lighting, sunlight is best, remedies the problem. I always have a second pair of readers within reach for tiny print. From Elizabeth. And treating insect bites. Dear Heloise, years ago, a doctor who was treating me for a fire ant bite told me to soak my foot in hot water as hot as I could stand. It intensified the itch unbearably, but afterward I was no longer bothered by the constant itch. I've done this for mosquito bites, chigger bites, and spider bites by using a hot compress. It works every time. I enjoy reading your column in the Waco Tribune Herald, and it's from Mary. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Report. Consumers worried about inflation. U.S. consumers grew more concerned about near-term inflation pressures in June, even as their worries about gasoline prices eased and were more upbeat about current and future personal finances, a New York Federal Reserve report showed Tuesday. Inflation a year from now was expected to be 3.7% in June, which would mark the highest reading since September 2023, the regional Fed Bank said in the latest survey of consumer expectations. The figure for May was 3.5%. Inflation 3 years from now was expected to be 3.3%, marking the highest level since June 2022. In comparison, May's reading was 3.1%. Expected inflation 5 years from now, which most closely watched by central bank officials, held steady at about 3%. And Trump asks justices to block Carroll Award. President Trump filed a last-ditch plea with the U.S. Supreme Court as he tries to prevent writer E. Jean Carroll from collecting $5 million awarded by a jury that found he had sexually abused and defamed her. Trump on Monday asked the High Court to take the unusual step of reconsidering its June 29th rejection of the president's appeal. The Supreme Court made no comment when it denied the appeal. The verdict is one of two Jean Carroll won against Trump, who he has indicated he also will seek Supreme Court review of the $83.3 million award in a separate defamation suit. The Justice Department says it will join the effort. And bomb suspect ineligible for January 6 rider pardon. A federal judge ruled Monday that President Trump's expansive pardon of January 6 rioters does not apply to a Virginia man accused of planning 2 pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. the night before the 2021 insurrection at the Capitol. Prosecutors say Brian Cole Jr. placed bombs near the Republican and Democratic National Committee's headquarters on the night of January 5, 2025. His attorneys argued in March that Cole should be covered by Trump's pardon because the alleged conduct is so inextricably and demonstrably tethered to the events at the Capitol on January 6. In a 3-page order, District Judge Amir H. Ali, an appointee of President Joe Biden, rejected Cole's argument and said he should not be included in that pardon. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, July 8th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beanon
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan.
On to some local and regional news. Two shorts here. The first one, Trocaire is hunting for new president. Trocaire College has begun a search for its next president. Bassam Deeb, the current president, has led the private Buffalo school since 2012. He has committed to remaining in his role until the search process is complete, after which he will retire. Deeb, 64, said he has had conversations with the Board of Trustees over the past year and a half about setting in motion a succession plan. Deeb said he made it a personal goal to retire around 65, and he wanted to allow time for Trocaire to make a smooth transition to a new president. And the other short here, Erie County Fair cuts ticket, food, and ride prices. At a time when prices are just about everything are climbing, organizers of the Erie County Fair said next month's event in Hamburg will buck the trend with lower prices on admissions and options for food and rides they hope will be less of a drain on families' wallets. Fair officials estimated that the new price reductions across the board will save families of 4 an average 12% compared to last year. Erie County Fair CEO Jessica Underberg said they have been looking for ways to reduce prices since the end of last year's fair, when guest feedback made it clear that customers continued to feel a full day at the fair had become too expensive. For the past couple of years, we've heard some chatter about pricing. It's expensive, Underberg said at a press conference at the fairgrounds on Tuesday. Last year, we heard it from our vendors saying, we're hearing from your guests that it's expensive, and for me, that was a piece that was like, okay, now what are our vendors telling us too? This year's admission prices are, from July 7th to August 7th, advanced admission tickets will cost $15, down from $17 in 2025. From August 8th to 23rd, tickets will cost $19, down from $22.60 in 2025. New early bird pricing of $16 will be available for guests who arrive between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. As in years past, kids 12 and under get in free when accompanied by an adult over 21. Once inside the grounds, cost-saving options will include a $2 ride day on August 13th, when all rides will be $2. A Sunday pay one price wristband will be available on August 16th and 23rd, offering unlimited rides from noon to 5 p.m. for $30. Fair organizers also announced a new requirement that all food vendors must offer at least one item for under $7. There are other specific daily promotions being offered. August 12th, free admission if you bring four canned foods to donate to Feed More Western New York. August 14th, free admission and a $10 food and beverage voucher for firefighters and auxiliary members. August 16th, free admission and a $10 food and beverage voucher, military veterans and auxiliary members. August 17th, all food vendors will offer a sample item for $3. August 18th, discounts will be offered by most retail vendors and $12 admission for ages over 62. And August 19th, 2 admission tickets for $30. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Ellen Pergament. Once at WKBW-TV, Morand lands with Clinton Foundation. Former WKBW-TV Channel 7 reporter Kristen Moran's landing spot after leaving television news sounds familiar to other media members who have left the industry. Morand recently left her role as an anchor and reporter in Cleveland after less than a year to become the senior manager of digital content at the Clinton Foundation in New York City. Many local TV news reporters leave the industry to use the skills they have acquired to work in public relations and nonprofit and charitable organizations, where the hours and pay usually are much better. Morand, who texted me that she is too busy acclimating to her job to be interviewed, announced her move recently on social networks. She wrote, "I started a new chapter in NYC. The last time I lived here was in 2019 as an intern for NBC. Wondering where a career in news might take me. Since then, I've had the opportunity to tell stories across the country, grow as a journalist, and experience more than I ever imagined. Now, I'm so excited to be back in New York and starting a new chapter as Senior Manager, Digital Content at the Clinton Foundation. I'm looking forward to helping tell the stories behind the Foundation's work and impact around the world, while continuing to do what I love most, connecting people through storytelling. According to the website, the Clinton Foundation is a nonpartisan organization founded by President Bill Clinton. Since 2001, the foundation has transformed philanthropy through programs that develop leaders and accelerate solutions to the world's most pressing challenges. Under the leadership of President Clinton, Secretary Hillary Clinton, and Chelsea Clinton, our unique approach prioritizes solutions over ideology, bringing people together in the spirit of collaboration and pragmatic problem solving. In an increasingly complex, divisive, and interconnected world, we strive to fill the gaps between what the public sector can provide and what the private sector can produce. Moran, a Western New York native, left Channel 7 in October 2025 to become a reporter and fill-in anchor at WKYC in Cleveland. In a post announcing her departure from Cleveland, she wrote, "After 10 years of chasing this dream, I've decided it's time to close my chapter in news and my chapter in Cleveland and step into something new," Moran wrote. The Ithaca College graduate wrote, "Her career in journalism shaped me in every possible way. It challenged me, pushed me, and boy, did it humble me. LOL. But ultimately, it helped me grow into the person I am today. For a long time, I was chasing the traditional news dream. Keep growing, move up, tell meaningful stories, and hopefully make a difference somewhere along the way. I can honestly say I gave this career everything I had, and I'm incredibly proud of that. Over time, my dreams and priorities evolved. I realized how important balance, peace, family, health, and fulfillment are to me, and making this decision came with a lot of reflection. But deep down, I knew it was time for a new chapter and new dreams. I'm incredibly excited for what's ahead and can't wait to share more soon." Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Weekend of chaos leads to pledge from city leaders. Buffalo just experienced one of the most violent weekends in its recent history. On Tuesday, a visibly frustrated Mayor Sean Ryan said it cannot be repeated. Ryan's remark came as leaders continue to speak out about what caused the violence and what they plan to do to prevent such outbursts from happening going forward. Police Commissioner Erica Shields at the Monday news conference said the 11 shootings at 5 locations that occurred in a matter of hours and in close proximity Saturday night into Sunday morning all took place within the context of a street takeover, a large unsanctioned gathering prompted through social media. The victims of all the shootings are expected to survive. Throngs of people gathered Saturday night on East Delavan Avenue and surrounding streets. Police officers and emergency responders were prevented from getting to the victims of violence, with the streets so packed with people they were impassable, according to police officials. And officers said they were shouted at, spit on, and had fireworks hurled at them. One officer, in an unrelated incident, saw his house vandalized with his wife and children inside after breaking up a fight on the South Buffalo street where he lives, according to social media posts from the police union. Ryan, in remarks following an unrelated news conference Tuesday, said his heart goes out to the many families and neighborhood leaders who saw their holiday ruined by their neighborhood being overrun by people who do not live there. That meant families who had planned barbecues could not do the barbecue because people were illegally parking all over the street, Ryan said. Block clubs who had planted intersections and corners with beautiful, wonderful flowers had those trampled, intentionally vandalized. So it was a bad day for the people who live in the city of Buffalo. City leaders have laid the blame at the feet of an unnamed organizer who prompted the street takeovers. Ryan said the organizer put together similar events last year on the 4th of July. City and neighborhood leaders approached him to try to convince him to become a legitimate event promoter and put on events through the proper channels, but he declined that advice and continued on with the illegal events. The organizer wanted to organize chaos, and they achieved it, Ryan said. Ryan said the Corporation Counsel's office and police department are now exploring options to prevent these types of events going forward, including the possibility of instituting curfews. The city also is pursuing civil actions against the promoter, to recoup the overtime pay the police department incurred as a result of the event, as well as investigating whether criminal charges can be brought. This type of lawlessness will not be permitted, he said. We're not doing it. Maston District Council member Zanetta Everhart, whose district includes the location of the gathering, has made gun violence prevention her main focus since joining the council in 2024. She said it's frustrating to hear so many blaming young people when so few resources are invested in giving them constructive and safe ways to spend their time. It's not the gun violence, right? She said it's the issues that come before the gun violence. She has organized a community meeting for 5 p.m. Wednesday at Mount Olive Baptist Church on East Delavan Avenue in the heart of the area affected by the weekend violence. She has invited members of the Ryan administration to attend. She said that often the lens through which people view gun violence is reactionary, when the best methods of prevention involve addressing root problems. If we're not dealing with the resources that are absent in the neighborhood and in the communities, you're going to just keep getting more and more gun violence, and that's all I've been screaming about, Everhart said. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Delaware North helping preserve Olmsted Parks. Company commits $1 million along with some manpower. Delaware North is leading a hand to the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy with money and manpower. The company on Tuesday announced it was donating $1 million gift to the Conservancy's endowment campaign, while also committing to sponsoring 5 AmeriCorps service members from the Buffalo Service Corps to work at the city's 6 Olmsted Parks this summer. The announcement was made in Delaware Park. Today is more about this than a generous gift. It's about leadership. Delaware North has stepped forward as a true leadership partner, said Katie Stevenson, Executive Director of the Conservancy. Together, these investments strengthen both our future and our ability to care for the Olmsted Parks today. Buffalo is fortunate to have one of the greatest park systems in the country, said Jerry Jacobs, Jr., Chief Executive Officer of Delaware North. The Olmsted Parks are great, and they are part of the fabric of the city. Olmsted Parks belong to everyone. They are a place where people together gather and play and connect with one another. They're one of the things that make Buffalo and our region so special, Jacobs said. The money and manpower donations announced Tuesday were on top of an additional $450,000 investment and 50,000 hours in volunteer service hours provided already by Delaware North over the past 10 years, Stevenson said. Mayor Sean Ryan gave special thanks to Jacobs and the entire family. The city co-manages the Olmsted Parks with the Conservancy. Buffalo's Olmsted Parks are part of our identity, and protecting them requires strong partnerships and a long-term vision, Ryan said. Delaware North's leadership investment is an outstanding example of what can be accomplished when the public, private, and nonprofit centers work together to strengthen our community. I hope their commitment inspires others to join the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy Endowment Campaign and help build the permanent foundation needed to preserve one of Buffalo's greatest civic access. The partnership is a model the city will continue to work on and expand as the city is resurrecting its Parks Department. It is now a standalone department with a commissioner, Ryan said. We're bringing back our parks. We're bringing back our recreation. We are doing it in full cooperation with the Olmsted Parks Conservancy with private philanthropy, he said. The 5 Buffalo Service Corps AmeriCorps members provided by Delaware North will clock in 1,500 hours of service to preserve and enhance Buffalo's historic parks, said Kate Serrata, Executive Director of the Service Collaborative, which operates the Buffalo Service Corps. While these members gain hands-on experience in environmental stewardship, landscaping, and parks maintenance, they are also developing the workforce and leadership skills that will prepare them for long-term careers in our community and build them as our future leaders here in Buffalo, she said. Designed by landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted more than 150 years ago, the 6 made Olmsted Parks in Buffalo are Delaware, Cazenovia, Front, Martin Luther King Park, Jr., Riverside, and south. The Conservancy also manages 7 parkways and 8 circles. The Conservancy nonprofit organization has an annual budget of $6.1 million. It employs about 40 full-time field workers. The $1 million gift from Delaware North advances the Conservancy's endowment campaign, an effort to establish a permanent source of support for the operation and maintenance of the parks and parkways. Income generated from the endowment will provide long-term financial stability and help safeguard the future of Buffalo's historic landscapes, Stevenson said. Our parks are free to enjoy, but they are not free to care for, she added. Every tree we plant, every trail we maintain, every history landscape we preserve and restore requires dedicated people and sustainable resources. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 10:15. On to sports. 2 shorts here, folks. Golf, Alice Pegula from Wimbledon. 7th-seeded Coco Gauff punched her ticket to the Wimbledon semifinals with a 4-6, 6-3, 6-3 victory over 4th-seeded Jessica Pegula on Tuesday. Gauff recorded her 4th consecutive 3-set win and registered 7 aces en route to dispatching her former doubles partner in 1 hour and 48 minutes at the All England Club. And crash and burn. The United States World Cup dreams came to a crashing halt in the last 16 against Belgium on Monday as Charles de Ketelaere scored twice in a 4-1 win, overshadowed by FIFA's controversial decision to suspend U.S. forward Folarin Balogun's ban. Balogun was permitted to play despite receiving a red card against Bosnia and Herzegovina after U.S. President Donald Trump's unprecedented intervention, but he barely had an impact on the pitch. The 25-year-old forward did win the free kick, which led to a first-half equalizer, though Belgium's Nicolas Raskin said the perceived injustice had actually motivated Balogun's opponents. I think there was always justice somewhere in life, and the fact that something can happen like that, but we didn't think that was fair. Oops. U.S. coach Mauricio Pochettino said the row had not affected his team and attributed their poor performance to an off day against a top side. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Here we go. Victorious Belgium trolls U.S. on social media. Posts overturn this caption to Lukaku's round of 16 goal. Seattle. Belgium had its way with the United States during its round of 16 match in the World Cup on Monday. The Red Devils' official social media account even got in on the act shortly after the team's 4-1 victory over the Americans. The site posted an image of striker Romelu Lukaku celebrating his goal with the caption, "Overturn this," an apparent reference to the availability of U.S. star Folarin Balogun. Balogun was cleared to play against Belgium after initially receiving a one-match ban following a straight red card against Bosnia and Herzegovina on July 1st. He did not record a goal or an assist on Monday. President Donald Trump acknowledged that he called FIFA President Gianni Infantino to dispute the suspension, which only heightened the debate around the already controversial decision by the organization's governing body. The Belgian Federation was allowed to appeal, which it did with the appeal denied Monday morning. UEFA, the sport's governing body in Europe, said FIFA's decision to pause or erase a suspension crossed a red line. Belgium Deputy Premier Minister Maxime Prevot decried the intervention of Trump and the U.S. officials, calling it an incomprehensible decision and that it would be a blatant violation of the most basic rules of soccer and sport. Belgium coach Rudi Garcia was among those who criticized the suspension of Balogun's red card. He commended Balogun for approaching him after the match and downplayed a question about whether the situation further motivated his side. No, it wasn't needed, Garcia said, regardless of the U.S. starting lineup. What really mattered to us was our lineup. It did not change anything when it came to our dedication. And Pochettino taking time to figure his future. Maurice Pochettino certainly sounds open to staying on as the coach of the U.S. team, but said he will take time after Monday's loss before making any final decision.
Thank you, Larry. What is Moore's ceiling in Bills' offense? In a world dominated by fantasy football, it's natural for fans to fixate on numbers. So the question of what DJ Moore's ceiling is with the Buffalo Bills is certainly top of mind, with training camp opening later this month. Top of mind for most people, that is, not just Moore himself. I just go into it with a free mind, no goals, the veteran wide receiver said. Like this past year, I didn't have no goals, so I think this year I'm going to go into it the same because it turned out to be a winning season. Statistically, Moore had his worst professional season in terms of catches and yards, 50 for 682 in 25 with Chicago. The Bears, however, went 11-6 and gave Moore his first taste of playoff action, advancing to the divisional round. That experience surely shapes his approach on not setting individual goals. It just clears your mind of you not thinking about, oh, am I getting catches? Am I getting targets? It's just you get free play. You play free, he said. That's an admirable approach, but it doesn't change the fact that the Bills are counting on Moore to put up big numbers. It's been well established that the team didn't get nearly enough production from its wide receivers last season, and Moore's acquisition was the biggest fix to that problem put together by President of Football Operations and General Manager Brandon Beane. The Bills are counting on Moore to be their number one receiver. However, that's defined. Moore's 17-game average over his first 8 NFL seasons is 79 catches for 1,066 yards and 5 touchdowns. Those totals all would have led the Bills last year. Those career averages are a good starting point for the type of production the Bills hope to get out of Moore. His best season came in Chicago in 2023 when he had 96 catches for 1,364 yards and 8 touchdowns. If he can approach those numbers, picking up a second-round draft pick to acquire him will look like a wise move by Beane, who also got a fifth-round pick back in the deal. Moore and Allen spent the spring starting to build chemistry, a process that will continue once training camp opens at St. John Fisher University. Moore is entering his age 29 season, but Bills head coach Joe Brady does not see a player who is slowing down. Brady should know well, too, considering he was Moore's offensive coordinator with the Carolina Panthers during 2020 and a portion of the 2021 seasons. Moore had 66 catches for 1,193 yards in 2020 and 93 catches for 1,157 yards in 2021, combining for 8 touchdowns during those years. I remember Bills backup quarterback Kyle Allen, who was actually with DJ before I was, and he was like, man, he looks the same, Brady said. I was so excited when we traded for him, and I'm more excited for getting to work with him for an off season. His demeanor, his approach, his leadership, like he's out there, he's practicing, he's pushing through, everybody's sore. It's been a long off season. It was voluntary, but I asked the guys to come back a little earlier, and he's out there and available, and I think so much to that. He's leading to the room. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to hockey, a look at rest of the Atlantic in off-season. Buffalo Sabres didn't make a lot of big moves at the start of free agency, largely because they weren't necessary. They had already committed to 2 players projected as major pieces of the future in the organization. But they didn't enter the off-season and free agency by operating in a vacuum either. This year's crop of free agents wasn't extraordinary, and when the Sabres negotiated a sign-and-trade that sent Alex Tuch to Washington, it ultimately took one of the top free agent commodities off the market. The Sabres, though, faced a much different scenario than other teams in the Atlantic Division that made notable deals through free agent signings and acquisitions. Here's a look at the off-season moves in the Atlantic Division. So far, by the Sabres, Boston, Florida, and Tampa Bay, and takeaways from those moves or moves that were not made. In the first of the series, we looked at how Toronto, Detroit, Ottawa, and Montreal have managed in the early days of free agency. Buffalo Sabres. Losing Tuch was a hit to the Sabres lineup as far as productivity from a top-line, two-way power forward. Signing Beck Malenstein was a priority to maintain a level of physicality on the Sabres' fourth line, as he finished 5th in the NHL last season in hits, 282, and signing Olen Zellweger allows him to develop into a top-4 defenseman. likely at the spot vacated on the Sabres' second defensive pairing by the trade of Bowen Byram to Chicago. The Sabres didn't have a lot of cap space, though, to make big signings, even though there's still the possibility that South Buffalo's Patrick Kane could be available. The right wing remained unsigned as of Tuesday afternoon. Instead, the Sabres invested wisely by making 7-year commitments to Josh Doan in January, $6.95 million average annual value, to Zach Benson in June, $7.5 million AAV. The takeaway: investing in Doan and Benson set the table for the future, but didn't leave a lot of immediate room to sign a big-name free agent. The Sabres are banking on who returns to the roster this season, and those players stepping into bigger roles. Think forwards: Noah Ostlund, Konsta Helenius, and Jerry Coolidge. Well, let's look at some of the Boston Bruins. Boston made its most notable off-season acquisition in June when it traded 2 first-round picks, 2026 and an unconditional pick in 2028, to Utah for right-wing J.J. Peterka, who's coming off his 3rd consecutive season with at least 25 goals. Peterka should provide some scoring zip after Victor Arvidsson, 25 goals, signed with Detroit as a free agent. Peterka needs to maximize his potential and play a stronger two-way game after a 47-point season in Utah, a 21-point drop from his last season with the Sabres. He acknowledged in June that he was not pleased with his play in Utah. Other notable acquisition: the Bruins hired former Sabres general manager Kevin Adams to the front office position. Takeaway: the Bruins got an offensive spark in Peterka and added a pair of defensemen in Connor Clifton and Will Borgen, both former Sabres. But look, a lot of other teams, they didn't take a deep dip into the free agent market. Florida Panthers. The Panthers made significant moves through trades. They now have the Tkachuk brothers in tandem after acquiring Brady from Ottawa last month for a handful of draft picks. They also acquired veteran forward Garnet Hathaway from Philadelphia. The noisiest acquisition? Getting negotiating rights for Radko Gudas by trading A.J. Greer's rights to Anaheim. The Panthers signed Gudas, a 36-year-old defenseman, to a 6-year contract with a $1.5 million cap hit. From the Panthers' perspective, they added a needed toughness and physicality, but from the rest of the NHL's perspective, they may have added some recklessness. There's a reason they call the 15-year veteran the Butcher. The Panthers trended towards older, more longevity in their acquisitions, including Hathaway, 34, center Lars Eller, 37, goalie Jacob Markstrom, 36, and defenseman Alexander Petrovic, 34. The Panthers didn't re-sign Sergei Bobrovsky, who is now in Toronto, and goaltending may turn into a question mark, but expect Markstrom to be the starter in his return to the Panthers, who drafted him in 2008 following a trade last month with New Jersey. The takeaway? The Panthers plan to return with a roar this season. The grind of playing in 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals plus inopportune injuries caught up with the Panthers at the start of last season. Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning landed the big fish on defense in this year's free agent class by signing John Carlson, who essentially moves into the spot vacated by Darren Radish, who capitalized on a career year in 2025-26 and went to Toronto in a sign-and-trade. But by signing Carlson, Tampa Bay's defense got older. Carlson is 36, Ryan McDonough is 37, Victor Hedman is 35. The other argument is that the Lightning got more experience, in a vein similar to Florida, as Carlson enters his 18th NHL season and is known for his puck movement skills. His playmaking ability on the power play: of his 615 career assists, 229 are on the power play, and he routinely averages 24 of ice time per game each season. Tampa has signed depth pieces, including forwards Ilya Mikheyev and Jeffrey Viel, who will bring a physical edge. Viel had 121 hits and 79 penalty minutes in 45 games with Boston and Anaheim last season. The takeaway? The Lightning did something not a lot of other teams did. They signed a marquee player out of free agency. They added depth pieces through free agency, and they kept intact their core, one that hadn't been able to get out of the first round of the playoffs in the last 4 seasons. And the NHL season is to release the schedule on July 16th. The NHL announced Tuesday that it will release the 26-27 schedule over 2 days next week. We will announce opening night matchups as well as the NHL signature events for the 26-27 season on July 15th, and then we'll announce the full regular season schedule at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on July 16th.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:30. Asking Eric, mother can't handle daughter's job frustrations. Dear Eric, a year and a half ago I moved in with my mother. It was her idea as I was having financial and health difficulties. I resisted at first, but eventually it became my only option. My life situation improved for a while, but I recently resigned from a stressful job at her urging. I am close to retirement age and have had difficulty finding and keeping a job since a career-ending layoff almost 15 years ago by an employer that was downsizing. I am extremely stressed out by the rejection emails and am easily agitated. My mother at the same time is ultra-sensitive to me expressing any form of frustration. She can't even tolerate a simple sigh in her presence. If she hears or senses me getting frustrated, she lashes out, sometimes angrily and other times calmly. And heaven forbid I try to defend myself. A lot of her intolerance stems from her miserable life with my narcissistic father, whom she divorced nearly 10 years ago after more than 50 years together. I am keenly aware of the fact that she is easily triggered by any display of frustration or anger. I don't think I'm a narcissist, but I definitely inherited his short temper, and I walk around on eggshells because of it. I try to make up for my shortcomings by doing all the household chores, but I want to do more and just don't know how. I feel like a failure as a daughter and a failure as a human being. I don't know what to do. From struggling. Dear struggling, you are not your circumstance, and you are not your worst day. You have value, and even though you feel right now that all your efforts are for naught, please remember that is not the full story. Try to create a little space in your relationship with your mother. Look into volunteering or hobby club, something that will get you out of the house and remind you of what it's like to interact meaningfully with other people. Also consider therapy if you have insurance or a support group, someplace where you can express your frustration without it triggering your mother. Right now, everything is so about so much more than it's really about. Your sighs become about your father. The chores become about your guilt. Try to disentangle some of that by practicing having conversations that aren't as charged with people who can listen and not react. Dear Eric, this response is in reference to the 64-year-old grandmother taking care of twin boys and a 2-year-old grandson who has autism. The 2-year-old is eligible for early intervention services. Depending on the state where they reside, the services will vary. Regardless, the child needs intervention immediately. At age 3, he will be eligible for a school-based program. AutismSpeaks.org can help point her in the right direction. Early intervention is so important. Her community may also offer different types of support services and social events. Each child with autism has specific needs. Experts can help the grandmother establish routines, deal with behavior, improve language skills, and address other issues, thus making her time a bit easier. Hope this helps. Dear resources, thank you for this response. The family may not be aware of how much help is available to them or where to go to find it. And also another one, Dear Eric, this is in reference to the letter from exhausted grandmother who retired early to take care of her 3 grandchildren but was feeling overwhelmed. An option they might not have thought of, try organizing a child care co-op. Get 4 or 5 families together and hire a creative, energetic person who is familiar with special needs as well as early childhood development. Rotate houses so each day of the week a different parent or grandparent works with the provider, child care leader in caring for all the children. Families pool money to pay the provider a decent hourly wage. This has the benefits for adults in adult companionship and support while doing the demanding work, as well as for the children. Socialization with other people in a small family grouping, familiarity with a variety of places, and creative activities. This arrangement was a lifesaver and genuinely enriching experience for our children when our families were either too far away or too ill to help. From Co-op Booster. Dear Co-op Booster, it will take some legwork, but it's important for the letter writer and her family to have community connections, and she'll benefit from being able to rely on other adults. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. President is feeling let down amid big NATO arms deals. Ankara, Turkey. NATO leaders unveiled arms deals worth tens of billions of dollars in Turkey on Tuesday, driving home the message that they are heeding U.S. calls to spend more to defend Europe, even as President Trump said he felt let down and renewed his push to control Greenland. Leaders are convening for a summit in the capital, Ankara, hoping to project unity after another bruising year in which the Iran war once again exposed cranks in the alliance that has underpinned Western security since the end of World War II. In a meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Trump said he might have boycotted the NATO summit altogether had it not been for his warm relations with the Turkish leader, and did not rule out further troop withdrawals from Europe. Well, we're going to see. I was very disappointed with NATO, he said, singling out Britain, France, Germany, and Italy for not doing enough to support the U.S. war in Iran. Trump said that we aren't treated well by the Allies, even as he reiterated they did not want or need their help. Before I asked, they said they wouldn't be there, and we've invested trillions of dollars in NATO, Trump said. Trump said he had spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky before the summit about ending the war that started in February 2022 when Russia initiated a full-blown invasion of its neighbor. I think they both want to make a deal. It's too bad it took so long. Something's going to come out, he said. While sharply criticizing long-standing allies, Trump announced Washington would lift sanctions on Turkey that were imposed in 2020 over Ankara's purchase of Russian air defense missiles. He also expressed a willingness to sell Turkey F-35 fighter jets. The move would be a major gesture to Erdogan and remove a long-standing irritant in bilateral ties. Rutte seeks revolution. NATO members have repeatedly tried to show Trump that they are stepping up. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said on Monday Europeans had made a staggering increase in defense spending. Before Trump's arrival, Rutte trumpeted a series of initiatives and deals at a defense industry forum and called for a defense industry revolution across the alliance, warning over Russia's massive military spending, as well as China, North Korea, and Iran. We don't have the luxury of time. We need capabilities now to ensure we remain ready. The security situation demands it, Rutte said. The hum of machinery must begin to roar. The deals, estimated to be worth at least $50 billion, according to one NATO official, included European countries buying surveillance drones from the U.S. company Northrop Grumman and NATO buying planes from Sweden's Saab AB. Saab shares at one point rose more than 5% as investors bet on the company benefiting from European rearmament. Morgan Stanley upgraded the stock. Europe's defense sector has often been criticized as fragmented and straddled with red tape and rivalries between companies and countries. This has left Europe more reliant on purchases of U.S. weapons. Weak economic growth and the need to maintain generous state welfare provisions have also made defense spending tougher to sell in Europe. War revived criticism. Tensions within NATO, already strained over Ukraine and Trump's desire to wrest Greenland from fellow NATO member Denmark, have deepened since the U.S. attacked Iran in February. Trump has repeatedly criticized NATO members for insufficient support in the conflict, threatening to quit the alliance. On Tuesday, he renewed his push to wrest Greenland from Denmark. That should be controlled by the United States, not Denmark, he said. That's what hurt my relationship with NATO, because Greenland doesn't help Denmark. Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland, but it's an important part for the United States. Speaking at the summit, Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said she expected allies to respect her country's sovereignty and accept that Greenland is not for sale. European officials insists they largely honored commitments to the U.S., used their airspace and bases despite not having been consulted about a deeply unpopular war that roiled their economies. The U.S. has also announced troop withdrawals from Europe and launched a 6-month review of its military presence there. European officials said they were braced for a repeat of some of Trump's recent criticism and cannot be sure of a positive outcome, in part due to Trump's volatile relationship with some leaders, most recently seen in a feud with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Trump on Tuesday called Meloni a nice person, but criticized her for failing to help in the conflict with Iran. Meloni was once seen as a close ally of Trump, but the relationship faltered last month when he told Italian TV channel LA7 that she had begged him to take a photo with her at the G7 summit in France. She denied the claim and accused him of fabricating the story. She had criticized him this year for lashing out at Pope Leo over his condemnation of the Iran war. That in turn prompted a blunt rebuke from the president, who denounced her for refusing to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said his relationship with Meloni became a little bad because she refused to help us with Iran. She refused to get involved, so it soured my relationship with her a little bit. But I like her. I think she's a nice person, actually. But I think she made a mistake, Trump said. In March, Italy denied permission for U.S. military aircraft to land at the Segunola base in Sicily before heading to the Middle East because Washington had not sought prior authorization from the government in Rome. The U.S. leader had been asked about a picture he posted on Truth Social at the weekend showing Meloni looking at him with the caption, "Restraining order needed," a move that reignited the dispute with the Italian leader ahead of the NATO gathering. Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said Italy will stop responding to Trump's provocative remarks. Trump speaks for himself. We have a U.S. president who loves to provoke, especially on social media. We have decided to stop responding to these remarks so as not to fuel disputes among our allies, Tajani told La Stampa newspaper. We are and will remain friends of the United States as our strategic partner and that of Europe, Tajani added. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Fed judges flouting president's policy on holding migrants. Gilberto Pacheco was driving to work in California when he was pulled over in what court papers called a traffic stop in January. He was not accused of any crime, not even a traffic infraction, but he was imprisoned without bond for months because he arrived illegally in the United States more than 30 years ago from Mexico. Cases like that of Pacheco, who has applied for legal status through 3 U.S. citizen children, are what the Supreme Court has to consider when it rules on the Trump administration's mandatory detention policy. Justices are expected to hear the case as soon as October, after the U.S. Solicitor General requested the court to resolve conflicting rulings on the matter from appeals courts. The Trump administration's policy requires detention without bond for anyone who has crossed a border illegally and has been used to pressure immigrants into voluntary departure to escape sometimes squalid conditions. For now, plenty of U.S. district judges are questioning the idea that immigrants should be incarcerated indefinitely at the whim of the executive branch. Stateline reviewed every immigrant habeas petition case decided in a single day, June 16th, across the country in order to sample judicial opinion. A habeas case is a request from an immigration prisoner for a judge to review the legality of his imprisonment and order a bond hearing or release. Of the cases that were decided that day, judges released detainees immediately or ordered bond hearings 142 times and denied them just 36 times. Many of the judges, even Republican appointees, argued that unlimited detention was unconstitutional. One of those judges was Keith Ellison, who heard Pacheco's case. After being picked up in California, Pacheco was held in Houston and filed a habeas case in Texas. Ellison ruled that it was a violation of Pacheco's civil rights to detain him for months. He ordered Pacheco freed immediately. Given the severity of this ongoing unconstitutional deprivation of liberty, the court concludes that immediate release from custody is required, Ellison wrote. He wrote that he recognized that the Trump policy applied to Pacheco and that it was upheld by the New Orleans-based 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which governs Texas, but said that he was releasing the man anyway. The Due Process Clause does not permit the government to detain any non-citizen, no matter how long they have actually lived in the United States, for any length of time without any individualized justification, merely because that person initially entered the country without lawful admission, Ellison wrote, partially quoting a 2003 Supreme Court ruling. Ellison is a Democratic appointee from the Bill Clinton administration, but judges from both parties, including Trump nominees, ordered bond hearings for immigrants and found the Trump policy unconstitutional. They included judges in states where appeals courts had already upheld the policy. Many judges are going beyond bond hearings and ordering release directly, as Ellison did. In some situations, the judges are holding the legal cases open to make sure releases are made or bond hearings are fair. Few immigrants get bond hearings because the policy making court challenges their only recourse, said Xin Tian, an attorney representing an immigrant who was released June 16th in a California case. The individual's only recourse for release is to seek a writ of habeas corpus, Tinian wrote in an email to State Line. Fortunately, federal judges uphold the Constitution and will grant such a writ according to direct release. Aside from this, there are virtually no other ways to obtain release. A Trump appointee in Texas, U.S. District Judge Jason Pullian, ordered 5 releases in one day, calling the detentions unlawful and ordering immediate release under court proceedings. In each case, he wrote that the detainee has no known criminal history, has been complying with the terms of a prior release, and there is no indication of flight, risk, or danger to the community. He acknowledged in court papers that he made the rulings despite the fact that an appeals court ruling for the Fifth Circuit affecting Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi had concluded mandatory detention was legal in those cases. A President Joe Biden appointee in Utah, U.S. District Judge Anne Marie McGiff Allen, was one of the rare judges to agree with the Trump administration's policy, according to State Line's review. McGiff Allen denied a petition for a bond hearing by a man from Venezuela who had arrived in Texas in 2024 to seek asylum. He had scheduled an appointment with Customs and Border Protection through an official mobile app, then settled in Florida. His immigration case was still pending when the Trump administration revoked his parole and arrested him in May. The man was not entitled to immediate release or bond hearing, McGiff Allen ruled, acknowledging that some district courts have determined the issue differently. The detention was legal under a Trump administration policy that interprets immigration law to mean all immigrants who arrived illegally can be treated as if they're at the border seeking admission to the country. State Line found only 7 cases where judges favorably cited the administration's policy of mandatory detention when denying a habeas case. Despite the ruling from a Biden appointee in Utah, there were 6 involving Trump judicial appointees, 4 in New York and 1 each in Puerto Rico and Texas. Relatively few judges in the State Line review considered the mandatory detention policy valid. 4 of the other 6 cases for that day that did so, other than the Utah case, were denied by a single judge, Trump appointee Judge John L. Sinatra in New York's Western District Court. Sinatra wrote in one of the cases for a Venezuelan man who had been allowed into the country in 2024 on parole that such people should be treated as if they were still at the border seeking admission and face mandatory detention, as you do not get the constitutional rights of someone already in the United States with legal status. How could it be otherwise? If he were not seeking admission, he would have given up and departed already, Sinatra wrote in his decision. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Hofstra says Canada paying for a new bridge is a big myth. Excuse me. U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hofstra, is calling claims that Canada paid for the Gordie Howe Bridge construction a big myth, even as the Canadian government insists it bore the full cost of building the span. The former Michigan congressman appeared last week on the Food Professor podcast to discuss trade between the U.S. and Canada and food security. The topic of the Gordie Howe Bridge came up. Hofstra asked the host, Sylvan Shirbola, and Michael LeBlanc if they could tell him who paid for the new crossing between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario, which still hasn't opened. Charlebois is a professor and researcher of food distribution and policy at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. LeBlanc is founder and president of the M.E. LeBlanc & Company Incorporated, a retail consulting firm based in Toronto. Their podcast examines issues in the food service, grocery, and restaurant industries. Charlebois answered, Canada. That's the big myth that is out there, the funding of the bridge, Hoekstra said. I think it's important that people realize this. He explained that the Canadian government loaned the authority behind the bridge $4.5 billion to $5 billion. Canada is serving as the bank for the bridge, the ambassador said. The expectation is that over the years, as the bridge generates revenue, the bridge will be paid back. So the bridge will actually be paid for by the folks who are using the bridge. It will not be paid for by the Canadian government. Canada put the money up front, but at the end of the day, the expectation is there will be a use tax that will pay for the bridge, Hoekstra said. Last month, the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority was making plans to fully open the bridge after 8 years of construction. But the plans were canceled on June 11th, one day before the planned ribbon-cutting ceremony on the Ontario side of the span. Hoekstra also addressed the delayed opening of the bridge. He said the project was significantly over budget and was completed significantly later than originally forecast. As a result, the bridge's business model has changed according to the former lawmaker. He said both the Canadian and U.S. governments decided to iron out issues that arose from the change before the bridge opens, and that's what caused the opening to be postponed. We're working through the process right now, he said. The expectation is the bridge will open. We're just not sure when. Bridge background. Hoekstra and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, both top advisors to President Trump, privately pushed back last month on plans to open the long-awaited Gordie Howe International Bridge, according to 3 sources. During the podcast, the ambassador pointed out that the traffic that will travel over the new span won't be new, and as a result, the revenue generated from its use won't be new. You're moving revenue from either the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel or the Ambassador Bridge, Hoekstra said. Trump had threatened to block the bridge's opening in February, demanding concessions from Canada in trade talks or a share of future toll revenue. Hours before Trump's threat, Lutnick met with Grosse Pointe's businessman Matthew Mulroon, owner of the Ambassador Bridge, Detroit's only bridge to Windsor. Former Governor Rick Snyder, who played a key role in forging the 2012 agreement with Canada to build the bridge, said last month it will mean growth for the region and state, more jobs, more prosperity on both sides of the river. It'll make it less expensive, easier to do business between the two countries, and that results in jobs and a better quality of life for everybody. Legal briefs. McGee Legacy Holdings LLC. On June 3, 2026, McGee Legacy Holdings was officially formed. Articles were filed with the NYS Secretary of State. Okay, I guess that's about it. All we need. That's not very even relevant to this bridge. I don't know why they put that in there.
Thanks,
Linda.
Larry. McConnell's team still not saying much on the senator's condition. Senator Mitch McConnell has been hospitalized for 3 weeks, and it's still not clear why he was admitted or what his condition is. Aides for the Kentucky Republican have been fiercely protective of his condition, publicly and privately, during his hospitalization. Despite requests for updates from CNN, his office has not disclosed a medical reason for the hospitalization or provided specifics on his current health status beyond saying last week that he continues to improve and is working closely with his staff on Kentucky and Senate matters. The lack of information has sparked questions over McConnell's health and has led to speculation and rumors online that his health has significantly deteriorated. On Tuesday, however, in an apparent effort to push back on those rumors, a number of high-profile Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, put out statements saying they had recently spoken with McConnell. McConnell's office pointed to the statements and said, as the senator continues to recover, we will be sure to keep you updated. Pre-existing health issues? McConnell was a childhood polio survivor. He has also faced a series of health issues in recent years. In March 2023, he suffered a concussion and broken ribs after a fall. Months later, he froze mid-sentence during a news conference. CNN later reported he had suffered 2 other falls earlier that year. So what's happened in the Senate? McConnell has missed some high-profile Senate votes during his hospitalization, including one to pass a major housing affordability bill and votes to check President Trump's ability to wage war in Iran. Trump has not yet signed the housing bill, which passed both the House and Senate. It is expected to become law if he does not veto the legislation. The chamber has also been in recess for parts of McConnell's hospitalization. Senators have been working in their home states since June 29th and won't return to the nation's capital until July 13th. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. ABC says U.S. regulator pushing Trump politics. Washington. Disney-owned ABC urged the Federal Communications Commission on Tuesday to reject a proposal to declare its daytime talk show, The View, subject to federal equal time rules for political candidates while ignoring conservative talk radio shows. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, July 8, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beanon. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability